Now we can move on to labeling the data. So once we have the images loaded in, we can go down to Analytics and AI and over to the data labeling service. So clicking on that, it opens up the kind of standard screen that we have, and it's got some demos there, very basic demos that aren't really useful. So we're going to click into datasets. So we need to define a dataset that we're going to label, and we're going to create a new dataset. So this is where we can store kind of subsets of images that we've already uploaded into our different buckets. So in this particular case, I'm going to call it demo with like dataset, because we're going to be doing some person recognition or people identification on it. We're going to have it in multiple labels, and we're going to select the images from the bucket that we've just uploaded. So there's our demo bucket. Once we select that, it's going to upload or open up some previews of some of the images within those buckets. They aren't necessarily labeled in order, but we get to see it. And then we can actually define our labels. Now it's probably easier if you can actually define them all in this particular place. So some of our labels is, does the image contain Martin? Does it contain Martin and Neil? And we can actually define other labels, as many as we want. We don't actually have to use them, but if we kind of miss one out and we kind of identify a label later on, we can actually add that in at a later point, which I'll show you in a moment. Once we define that, we can do create, and effectively it'll go off for a few moments creating the data set. So what it effectively does, it goes off to the bucket, takes the images in the bucket and take a copy of those. And so the original data set isn't actually affected in any sort of way. So this will take kind of a few moments. We can monitor the progress there in the top right hand corner. So we can see it's up to 84% at this point, and it should go to 100% any moment now. And once this is in, then we can actually look at the images. So we can do it at a kind of a record view level, or if we want to go over and look at the kind of the gallery view, which kind of gives us a bit more of a kind of look at the images that we actually have, and we can actually progress them from there. So let's get into labeling some of the data. So in this particular case, we're going to do just labels. So this is for each of the images. Does it contain Martin or does it contain something else, right? Effectively, in a lot of cases, these images just contain images of Martin Whitlick and other people. So here's an example. Oh, hang on, here's Martin, but has other people in it. So we have Camille from Poland there. He's going to appear in a lot of the images. So we can create a new label that kind of identify him as well. And as we do that, then we can progress through all the different images that we have. So as you can imagine, if you've got hundreds or thousands of images, this can take a little bit of time in order to prepare the data. And this is only one approach. So this is just labeling the images. All right. So here's an example of Martin and Neil, and we can progress on and on. All right, so I'm going to just finish there because there's a couple of hundred images there, or 142 images, whatever, to go through. So it can take a little bit of time to progress. Now, an alternative to all of this is to look at using creating a data set that's based on the bounding box. So this is where we can take an image and add additional level of effectively metadata to the image, as to say is what's important and what's not. So who are the people and who's not people, and who's things like that. So let's work through a few examples of this. So just like what we did with the previous example of doing the label. So here's one images that I've already marked up. So we have one here with in the middle marked up as not being Martin, and then we can actually mark up lots of other people, so including myself kind of there in all of these. Now I could go along and put in more information and more people in that. In this particular case, remember we had kind of images labeled with Martin and Camille, where this one is like, well, it already has Martin and Camille in it. They're separate things. Similarly, when we have Martin appearing multiple times within the image, we can label all of that. And then this is where we can start being a lot more kind of richer in what we can do. And this is, using this bounding box kind of approach can give us greater accuracy in the models that are going to be used on identifying the objects, or in this case people, within those particular images, because we're feeding more information into it, so it'll learn the differences between the objects that we are of interest in and objects that we're not interested in, or has other kind of labels and other kind of meanings. So there I am again. So we can go, that's not Martin, but we have Camille there in the image. And this can go on with all our different images within all our data set. So as you can imagine, there's a bit more work to this, so hence it's going to take longer and longer to be able to complete. But what we have then is a much greater and richer data set to be able to use. Whether you're using the bounding box or the label, will give you different outcomes.